The first thing I heard was laughter. It didn't come from the room I was in. It came from my phone, buzzing softly on the kitchen counter like it was unsure whether it should interrupt me or not. I had just finished washing a single mug, the same one I'd been using for years, chipped at the rim but still holding together. I placed it upside down on the towel and wiped my hands slowly, not knowing that the life I thought I understood was about to shift. When I picked up my phone, I saw her face immediately, my stepsister. She was smiling into the camera the way she always did, effortless, practiced, certain she was being admired. The video had already been playing when I opened it, and for a few seconds I didn't realize what I was watching. Then I heard my name, not spoken directly, just implied, a familiar tone half joking, half cruel. The caption floated above her head in bold white letters. Pav, your stepsister is still stuck in a dead end life and thinks she's content. I watched without blinking. She panned the camera around an apartment that looked exactly like mine. A small living room, neutral walls. A couch with worn arms. She laughed softly and said some people mistake surviving for living. She said she couldn't imagine waking up every day with no real future. She said it kindly, as if pity made it harmless. The comments poured in faster than I could read them. She's jealous, some people peak early. Couldn't be me. I scrolled back up and noticed the view count. 2 million. My chest tightened, not because strangers were laughing, but because she knew me. She knew how carefully I lived, how quietly. She knew I avoided attention, avoided conflict, avoided anything that might make me visible enough to be judged. And she used that knowledge to entertain people who would never know my heart. I lowered myself into the chair by the window, my phone heavy in my hand. Outside, traffic moved on like nothing had happened. The world didn't pause for humiliation. It never does. What hurt most wasn't what she said, it was what she believed. She believed my life was small because it was quiet. She believed success needed to be loud to be real. She believed kindness was the same thing as weakness. And somewhere along the way, she learned that I was safe to step on, because I never stepped back. I remembered holidays where she spoke over me, family dinners where my achievements were nice and hers were impressive. I remembered how often I'd paid attention while she demanded it. I had never corrected her perception, not once. The video ended, looping back to the beginning, her laughter repeating like it wanted to stay. I turned the phone face down on the table. My hands were shaking now, but my breathing stayed even. I had learned a long time ago how to cry without making noise. I stood up and walked through my apartment slowly, seeing it the way she had framed it. Plain, modest, unremarkable. And yet every corner held effort. Every bill was paid. Every quiet evening had been earned. She never knew how this place existed. She never knew who made sure the rent was always on time, who stayed silent so she could stay comfortable, who chose discretion over recognition. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Something inside me wasn't broken. It was done. And that realization, quiet, steady, and irreversible, was the beginning of everything that followed. I didn't confront her. People always imagine that pain demands a reaction, raised voices, shaking hands, words sharp enough to wound back. But my hurt didn't move that way. It settled. It became heavy, thoughtful, almost tired. Silence had always been my first language. Growing up, I learned that being easy made things smoother. My mother remarried when I was young, and suddenly the rules changed without being explained. My stepsister arrived with confidence and volume, with needs that filled rooms. I arrived with caution, already practiced in staying out of the way. She was celebrated for being bold. I was appreciated for being understanding. That difference followed us into adulthood. When she struggled, the family rallied. When I struggled, I adjusted quietly. I told myself this was maturity. That love didn't need applause, that being dependable was its own reward. But dependability, I learned, can become invisible. 2 years earlier, she had called me crying from her car. Rent was late, the building management wasn't patient anymore. She was afraid of losing everything she had worked so hard to display. I remember gripping the phone, listening to her panic, feeling that familiar pull in my chest, the instinct to fix things without being asked. I helped the only way I knew how, not with an announcement, not with conditions. I used my savings, my connections, and my silence. I partnered discreetly with a small property group that held interest in her building. I didn't own it outright. I didn't need to. I only needed to make sure the pressure disappeared, and it did. Her rent stabilized. The notices stopped. She exhaled and moved on with her life. She never asked how things worked out. She never needed to. I never told her. At the time, it felt right. Watching her video now, I wondered if kindness without boundaries eventually teaches people the wrong lesson. She spoke about my dead-end life, like she was talking about a stranger, someone harmless, someone beneath concern. And maybe that was my fault. I had taught everyone that my sacrifices didn't matter enough to be named. I replayed moments in my head I had brushed off before, the jokes at family dinners, the casual comparisons, the way she only called when she needed something and disappeared when she didn't. I had confused peace with avoidance. I had confused patience with self-erasure. That night, I didn't sleep much, not because I was angry, but because I was awake in a way I hadn't been before, awake to the quiet imbalance, awake to the truth that love, when it flows in only one direction, eventually drains the source. By morning, my tears had dried into something clearer. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies pulled out of guilt. I didn't even want her to understand me. I just wanted to stop funding a version of myself that required being smaller for others to feel taller. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching light fill the room she had mocked. For the first time, I didn't see failure. I saw restraint, choice, control. I realized something then that hurt more than the video ever could. She didn't betray me in one moment. She betrayed me gradually every time she benefited from my silence and mistook it for nothing. And I allowed it, but allowance is not destiny. Silence had carried me this far. Now it would carry me somewhere else. Quietly, carefully, and this time for myself. I didn't do anything right away. That surprised even me. There was a time in my life when I would have rushed to explain myself, to smooth things over, to make sure no one felt uncomfortable, even if I was the one bleeding quietly. But after the video, something in me slowed down, not from fear, from clarity. The lease renewal date sat on my calendar in small, unassuming text 10 days. I hadn't put it there as a threat. It had been there long before the video. A simple reminder tied to paperwork and numbers, nothing emotional about it. And yet now, it felt symbolic, like time itself was offering me a pause before asking who I was willing to keep protecting. So I watched her post again the next day. A new video, same confidence, same casual superiority. The comments still praised her honesty, her realness. She liked them freely, as if public approval had become proof of truth. I didn't comment. I didn't share my side. I didn't defend myself. Each day, the urge to explain weakened. Each day, my breathing felt steadier. Instead, I noticed things I had ignored before. How often she spoke about support, as something she deserved, never something she offered. How quickly she dismissed people who didn't reflect well on her image. How easily she confused visibility with value. On the fourth day, I opened my laptop and reviewed the documents I hadn't looked at in months. Agreements, percentages, quiet investments that had never needed attention. Everything was legal. Everything was ethical. Nothing required drama. I contacted the property group with a short email. No accusations, no emotion. Just clarity. I withdrew my involvement. I asked for nothing in return. I didn't demand change or acknowledgement. I simply stepped out of a role I had never been meant to occupy forever. When I closed my laptop, my hands didn't shake. That surprised me too. The world didn't collapse after that. It rarely does. Consequences don't arrive with thunder. They arrive as small shifts, slower responses, firmer policies, numbers that no longer bend. By the 7th day, I noticed the change reach her. She posted less. Her captions felt tighter, more controlled. The confidence thinned around the edges. She spoke vaguely about unexpected challenges and people not being as supportive as you think. I watched without satisfaction. This wasn't punishment. It was reality returning to its natural shape. 3 days before the renewal, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, not out of cruelty, but because I wanted to answer without resentment. When I picked up, her voice was tense, confused, stripped of its usual certainty. She talked about rent increases, about management being inflexible, about how unfair it felt when things changed without warning. She didn't mention the video. She didn't ask how I was. I listened. When she finished, there was a pause, long enough for expectations to form. I broke it gently. Sometimes, I said, support disappears when it's treated like it doesn't matter. She went quiet. I didn't explain. I didn't reveal anything. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't always require exposure. Sometimes it only needs withdrawal. After we hung up, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Peace, not relief, not triumph, just peace. For the first time, I wasn't managing someone else's comfort at the expense of my own. I wasn't editing myself to remain useful. I was allowing life to respond honestly to the choices people made. And I realized then, strength isn't loud. It waits, it watches, and when it moves, it does so without leaving fingerprints. I didn't stay to watch what happened next. That was the part of growth no one warns you about, the moment when curiosity fades and distance feels kinder than knowing every detail. I had spent enough years observing other people's reactions to my silence. This time, I chose to observe myself instead. A month after the lease renewal date passed, I packed my apartment slowly, not because I was leaving in a hurry, but because I wanted to touch every object one last time with intention. The couch she had laughed at, the bookshelf I had built myself, the chipped mug that had held more of my mornings than anyone knew. I let them go without bitterness. My new place wasn't impressive. It wasn't meant to be. But it was bright in a way my old apartment never quite was. Sunlight reached the floor by mid-morning. The windows opened easily. It felt like a space that didn't require explanation. I didn't announce the move. I didn't post about it. I didn't need witnesses to prove I was okay. The silence between my stepsister and me stretched naturally after that. No dramatic fallout. No apology demanded or offered, just a growing absence that felt less like loss and more like alignment. We still shared family gatherings, but something had shifted. I spoke when I wanted to. I listened when it felt mutual. I no longer filled gaps that weren't mine to fill. She looked at me differently, not with remorse, with uncertainty, and I understood that too. When someone realizes you were never beneath them, just beyond their awareness, it unsettles the story they tell themselves. I didn't correct her version. I didn't need to rewrite the past to live differently in the present. One evening, weeks later, I sat alone on the floor of my new living room, tea warming my hands, and thought about how quietly everything had resolved. No confrontation, no dramatic justice. Just balance returning where it had been disturbed. I realized something important then. I hadn't taken anything from her. I had simply stopped giving, and that distinction mattered. I stopped paying emotional rent in relationships where respect wasn't guaranteed. I stopped offering softness to people who treated it as a resource rather than a gift. I stopped mistaking endurance for love. What surprised me most was how little I missed being needed. There was a calm in knowing my value didn't depend on how useful I was to someone else's comfort. That my life didn't need to look impressive to be meaningful. That quiet choices could still be powerful ones. I didn't win, I healed, and healing didn't look like standing taller than anyone else. It looked like standing fully within myself, without apology. If there is a lesson in all of this, it's not about money or power or secrets kept. It's about boundaries, the kind that don't shout, don't threaten, don't perform. Boundaries that simply say, "This is where I end, and you begin." Respect grows naturally in that space. And when it doesn't, distance becomes the most honest response. I still believe in kindness. I still believe in helping when it's asked for with humility. But I no longer confuse love with sacrifice that erases me. Some people only recognize your presence when it's gone. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally chose yourself, and for the first time in a long time, that choice felt like home.